Meet Rick Lucius, pilot, businessman, and the most elusive drug trafficker in American history. This is no ordinary crime tale. Rick managed a staggering $20 billion in illegal drugs, all while maintaining the facade of a successful entrepreneur who rubbed shoulders with politicians and even the U.S. president. How did a respected businessman fly under the radar of the law and mastermind America's biggest drug smuggling operation? Dive into the gripping story of deception, aviation, and high-stakes crime as we uncover the secrets of an extraordinary double life. Our journey begins in 1983, a time when America's appetite for illicit drugs brought the rise of powerful Colombian cartels like Medellin, led by the infamous Pablo Escobar. These cartels orchestrated vast networks of American smugglers who would risk everything for lucrative returns. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, was on high alert, waging a full-scale war against these smugglers. Rick Lucius, an aviation expert and pilot, flew under the radar, literally. Unlike typical traffickers who were flashy and predictable, Lucius was discreet and ingenious. While DEA agents hunted down gold chain-wearing smugglers in Florida, Lucius operated quietly out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. He avoided the known hotspots and trafficking profiles, blending the life of a respectable businessman with that of a high-stakes drug smuggler. Before we move on, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories from the darker corners of history. In Florida, small planes packed with narcotics flew in from Colombia, making the state a focal point for DEA operations. They implemented ground and aerial radars, and even the U.S. Navy patrolled the waters with radar-equipped warships to intercept drug runs. But Lucius was not in Florida. He was in Pennsylvania, far from the typical routes and methods used by his contemporaries. Rick Lucius was not just a pilot, he was a master aviation engineer. From a young age, he was obsessed with flying, earning his pilot's license while still in high school and later excelling at an aviation college. His deep understanding of aircraft mechanics allowed him to ingeniously modify small aircraft for his smuggling operations. His business, Air America, wasn't just a company, it was a front for his smuggling. Under the guise of increasing fuel capacity for efficiency, he modified planes to fly longer distances without refueling, crucial for his smuggling routes that were off the usual paths. Air America gained a reputation for excellence in modifying aircraft. What no one suspected was that these modifications made perfect smuggling vessels. By doubling the flight range of his planes, Lucius could avoid the heavily patrolled areas and fly non-stop from remote parts of South America to less conspicuous parts of the U.S., like Pennsylvania. His alterations weren't limited to fuel capacity. They extended to reinforcing wings, changing engines, and tweaking weights to handle the extra load. Each adjustment meticulously calculated to evade detection. As the DEA focused their efforts on the typical profiles and operations in Florida, Lucius continued to move billions of dollars worth of drugs right under their noses. His dual life as a businessman and a trafficker, his strategic avoidance of known smuggling routes, and his high-level modifications of aircraft formed a perfect storm that even the DEA's intensive efforts couldn't capture. Join us as we delve deeper into the life of Rick Lucius, the man who engineered the sky to hide his dark dealings, redefining what it means to be a drug smuggler in modern America. The business was thriving, generating immense profits and elevating Rick's social standing. His status afforded him connections with influential figures, including police leaders and the state governor. Rick's engagements at high-profile events even led to a memorable encounter with the former U.S. president. Everything was progressing perfectly until 1980, when a devastating economic crisis struck, severely impacting America and throwing Rick's company into turmoil. His regular clientele of business owners and entrepreneurs vanished overnight. In this period of financial uncertainty, a new type of customer began to appear. These clients had dubious intentions, often requesting modifications to their planes to include concealed compartments capable of smuggling illegal goods undetected. Although it was clear these modifications were for illicit activities, the dire state of his finances forced Rick to comply with these risky demands. The situation escalated when one customer, after receiving the requested modifications, insisted on paying with a bag of illegal drugs. Desperate to meet payroll, Rick had no choice but to accept. Unbeknownst to him, this customer was an undercover police officer. The transaction led to Rick's immediate arrest. However, upon investigation, authorities realized Rick was merely a struggling businessman caught in a desperate situation, not a genuine criminal. The DEA saw an opportunity in Rick's predicament. They offered him freedom in exchange for information on his dubious clients, who were likely involved in broader smuggling operations. Rick accepted, turning informant and beginning to relay details of suspicious activities observed within his business. By 1981, Rick's dealings had introduced him to a drug smuggling cartel based in Tampa, Florida, a hub for drug trafficking due to its proximity to Colombia. Recognizing his unique skills as a pilot and engineer, the cartel offered Rick a significant sum to transport drugs. Despite his reservations, the promise of quick financial relief for his struggling business was too tempting. Rick agreed, hoping it would be a short-term arrangement. Despite the intense DEA surveillance in Florida, Rick successfully completed several high-risk smuggling operations thanks to his expert flying and evasion tactics. These feats earned him substantial payments, vital for sustaining his business. However, the disorganized nature of the cartel's operations, coupled with the reckless behavior of its drug-using members, prompted Rick to sever ties after only 3 runs. The professionalism Rick displayed caught the attention of Jorge Ochoa, a key figure in the notorious Medellin cartel. Ochoa, impressed by Rick's capabilities, offered him a chance to re-enter the smuggling business. Tempted by the promise of immense wealth, Rick agreed, despite the clear dangers associated with such high-profile criminals. Rick's new role required even more sophisticated modifications to his aircraft to ensure a direct, undetected flight from Pennsylvania to Colombia. He acquired a Cessna 310, a model he was intimately familiar with, and began extensive upgrades. He tripled the fuel capacity and hid sturdy rubber bags filled with fuel throughout the aircraft's structure to avoid detection. Rick meticulously balanced the weight distribution to maintain the plane's stability, replaced the engine, and strengthened the aircraft's frame to handle the increased load, all to ensure a successful, covert operation. Rick wasn't just retrofitting planes. He was also strategizing meticulously to remain undetected. His clever moves included bribing a corrupt customs agent to provide critical information on radar locations and patrol schedules, making it easier for him to dodge these security measures. He also set up a secretive radio network to communicate directly with the cartel, using coded language to avoid the risk of intercepted phone calls. While orchestrating his smuggling operations, Rick maintained his role as an informant for the drug enforcement agents who had once arrested him. He built a rapport with these agents, sharing information daily and assisting in the capture of other smugglers. To the authorities, Rick was a reformed collaborator, but little did they know, he was orchestrating a smuggling operation on an unprecedented scale. After months of planning, Rick embarked on his first direct flight from Pennsylvania to Colombia, a grueling 13-hour journey covering 5,000 kilometers without refueling. Upon landing on an improvised airstrip in an open field, cartel members quickly loaded his plane with drugs and refueled it for the return trip. During this time, Rick calculated the aircraft's new weight and the required runway length for takeoff, crucial for a safe departure from the makeshift airstrip. The airstrip, unpaved and uneven with trees at the end, posed significant risks. Despite these challenges, Rick's modified plane, powered by a robust new engine, successfully lifted off, avoiding the fate of many smugglers whose planes crashed under similar conditions. On his way back, Rick opted for a longer, supposedly safer route to steer clear of DEA and Navy patrols. Mid-flight, when a Navy surveillance plane began pursuing him, Rick made a split-second decision to fly into a nearby thunderstorm, using the disruptive weather to shake off his pursuers. Emerging unscathed from the storm, Rick flew low to remain under the radar and briefly touched down on an abandoned runway. This maneuver was intended to mislead any surveillance into recording his flight as a short, local trip. He then continued to Scranton, officially logging his flight with the control tower as a domestic journey, further ensuring his operations remained invisible to authorities. Back in Scranton, Rick discreetly delivered his illicit cargo, receiving a staggering $1 million for his efforts. Impressed by his innovative tactics, the cartel relied on him for subsequent operations, allowing Rick to rapidly amass a fortune and expand his smuggling empire. He recruited more pilots and formed a specialized crew, personally overseeing the sophisticated modifications to each aircraft used in the smuggling runs. As Rick's experience grew, so did his confidence. His operations became increasingly bold, yet he and his team never lost a single aircraft, an extraordinary feat in the high-stakes world of drug smuggling. Recognizing his invaluable contributions, the cartel frequently rewarded him with bonuses beyond their initial agreements, amazed by his efficiency and ingenuity in transporting their goods. Throughout this tumultuous period, Rick cleverly maintained his connections with DEA undercover agents. They saw him as a reformed informant, oblivious to his real role as a leading smuggler. Rick was strategic, feeding them useful tidbits that would never implicate him, while building trust and cementing his image as a cartel insider aiding law enforcement. In 1984, Rick's world teetered on the brink of collapse when his initial smuggling group was caught in Florida. Arrested alongside 15 others, Rick was dragged into a high-profile trial. Despite the precarious situation, he continued his smuggling operations, claiming these activities were intended to gather intel for the DEA. In a bold move, he even persuaded DEA agents to testify on his behalf in court, maintaining his facade of cooperation. Throughout the 11-week trial, Rick audaciously conducted 11 smuggling runs, netting $13 million. His cunning defense and the DEA's support uniquely positioned him, resulting in his acquittal among the 15 defendants. Meanwhile, he laundered his massive earnings through Michael Coffey, a banking expert who discreetly moved funds to offshore accounts. Tragedy struck when one of Rick's pilots, Jim Cooper, collided with a car parked on the runway by a local drug dealer during a landing in Colombia, resulting in the dealer's death. The police quickly discovered the smuggling operation. Arrested and desperate, Jim was abandoned by Rick, prompting him to bargain with authorities by offering information on Rick's operations in exchange for leniency. Jim's betrayal sparked an intensive investigation into Rick and his company, Air America. As authorities pieced together the evidence from company records, communications, and financial transactions, Rick prepared for the worst. Anticipating arrest, he shifted $30 million to an account in the Cayman Islands and fled there, mistakenly believing the U.S. couldn't touch him there. Rick's miscalculation about the extradition treaty became apparent when Cayman authorities, deeming him a nuisance, apprehended him and turned him over to U.S. officials. Faced with a potential 345-year sentence for his extensive criminal activities, Rick opted to cooperate fully, revealing the locations of his hidden funds. In exchange for his cooperation, which yielded over $21 million in seized assets and crucial details about his smuggling operations, Rick's sentence was dramatically reduced to just 8.5 years. This leniency underscored the value of the information he provided, which the DEA considered more beneficial than a longer incarceration. Secretly, Rick had not disclosed all of his hidden assets, ensuring a significant fortune awaited his release. Rick's story is a compelling tale of deceit, cunning, and survival in the treacherous world of drug smuggling. His ability to manipulate both sides of the law allowed him to rise and, eventually, to save himself from life in prison. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the darker corners of history.